for a long time, I wake up in the middle of the night and I receive teachings, I get visions. And one of these visions was a lake. And it was a really calm, peaceful lake, like, wow. And then there was a being of light standing at the other side of the lake with a pebble. Like, I'm going to disturb this beautiful peace. And what is my first thought? Like, oh no, of course, my expectation is that the moment he drops this rock, he's going to disturb the whole lake. And then he grabs the pebble, he tossed it. And the moment the pebble touched the water, it did not create a disturbance. It did not create a ripple. So imagine like, oh, what just happened? And the beings of light said, that is where someday you'll have to be.
I'm really delighted that our featured speaker today is going to be Dr. Ingrid Honkola. She has had multiple spiritually transformative experiences, including 2 near-death experiences. She's an extremely popular public speaker born in Bogota, Colombia, and living in Mississippi in the United States. Ingrid is a marine biologist and a NASA oceanographer. She's also the author of that wonderful book, A Brightly Guided Light. Dr. Ingrid Honkola.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for having me here. It's just such a joy and a blessing to be able to share with everyone here today. So the name of my presentation today is Divine Guidance from Beings of Light and the Afterlife. And first, I'm going to start sharing with you about how my path of spirituality and my path of awakening started to happen. And it was all due because I had an accident when I was a little child. And what happened was that at the time, like Yvonne said, I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and I was living with my parents and my sisters. And every time my parents went to work, they would leave us at the care of a maid. And she was a lady that really didn't pay much attention to the things we were doing when they were not around. So my oldest sister and I, she was close to 4 years old. I was just a little child, close to 3 years old, decided, let's go play in the patio. No one is watching. We went to the patio, and in this patio, there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was for collecting water for hand washing clothes, because back then we didn't have a washing machine. And this was a big tank that held about 900 gallons of water. And then we saw a ball, and my sister said, oh, let's play cash across the tank. Okay, let's do that. We grabbed a couple of stools, climbed the tank, and she sat on the flat surface that was for scrubbing, so she was a little bit more safe. I went to the other side, and there was a thin edge, and I just folded my legs, and I was leaning very precariously in the tank. But at this age, it's like, let's just have fun. What is the fear? And then my sister grabbed the ball and she threw the ball, but she did not apply enough force, and the ball fell in the water. And I just thought, oh, I can grab it. And I leaned forward. And when I tried to grab the ball, it rolled on the surface of the water. I lost my balance and fell in the tank. And the first feeling was like, this water was frigid cold. People have the misconception that because I come from Colombia, I come from hot weather country. But I was born in Bogota, high up in the Andes. So the temperature in the water that early in the morning had to be around 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So imagine, it was like, oh, this water is, for me, was frigid cold. That was the first feeling. And the next one was the sense, what is happening? why I cannot breathe. And that was the moment in which I started to experience horror. I had never been I never had the head under the water. I had never been in a pool. So I didn't know that if you fall into water, you drown. So at that moment is that sense like, what is happening? Why I cannot breathe? And I am in this absolute moment of horror when in just a blink, I went from that horror to a moment of complete peace. It was like, I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why, but at this moment, I didn't know. I didn't have to escape out of the tank anymore. I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to go anywhere. It was just the sense of, I feel absolutely well. I'm peaceful and serene and calm. And then people usually ask me, how is it possible for you to remember this experience if you were so young? And I always like to mention that in this experience, there was a lot of contrast that I guess helped me to hold the memories of what happened. The first thing, of course, the trauma of drowning. The second thing was that I live in a house that was very noisy. And there was always noise, dogs, birds, sisters. And the other thing was the last thing I heard when I fell in the water was my heart pounding in my head, like imagine the scare. And it was like anxiety. And I could hear it like a drum in my head. And when I entered in that space of calmness and serenity, the sound stopped. And I experienced what I call the silence behind the silence. And I love this silence so much that I craved it for the rest of my life. Later, I will hide into closets, I will go chapels, whatever it was to find that silence. And I will be like, why can I not find it? The other contrast that was incredible was that the tank was entirely made of cement. It was a very dark area. It had a roof on top. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open was the darkness of the space. And it came the other incredible, amazing thing. And it was that suddenly there was light coming from below. And this light was enough, like it was soft, but it was enough to illuminate my whole watery surrounding. And then I'm like, wow, now there is light. And now in the light, bubbles started to appear. And the bubbles were surrounded by light. And it was like, oh, this is so much fun. And it was by chasing these bubbles that I turned around and I saw a body suspended in the water. And the body had the eyes open, like staring to nowhere. And I was like, at that moment, I saw the body and I was not afraid. I was not even like that much surprised. It was like, oh, that's my body. And it was the sense of familiarity. Oh, this already happened before. This is normal. And it comes the other big contrast. And it was that I was born as a very sick child. But like everything later in life, I started to discover had a purpose. And for me, being born as a very sick child gave me the possibility to experience that contrast between always feeling unwell. I didn't know how was to feel well. I always have been sick. And now I am experiencing the state of absolute and complete well-being. I'm like, wow. So what do you guys think that happened? When I saw the body, I had the clarity and I knew I could make the decision at this moment. I'm not going back there. And I turned around and left the body behind. And the moment I turned around and left the body, I started to see flowers. And these flowers were blooming from nowhere. And that was majestic. This was absolutely beautiful. And then the sense of dimension disappeared when I was picked by the flowers. And now I'm being carried by the flowers, and it's not like this and like, oh, I don't have to do absolutely anything. And I'm just like lying on the flowers. And I said to people, I give the analogy that is like going back to the womb. You don't have to do absolutely anything. You're just being done. And when I am in this state of absolute bliss, in just a blink, I appear in the maid's room. And I'm floating, like floating on the ceiling above her. And she's listening to soap operas in the radio. And I looked at her from above and I just said, oh, that's Maria. But nothing happened. She was very distracted. And again, in like just a flash, I appeared in my mom's path. My mom didn't have a car and she had to cross all this neighborhood to get to her bus stop. And again, I appeared like floating above her. I'm like, oh. And at that moment is when like, this is what leaves everybody like, what? And this is also what validates the experience. The moment I saw my mom, I said, oh, that's mom. She stopped. She did not give another step. She did not hesitate. She just at that moment had the feeling, the knowing something is happening at home with one of my babies. And she turned around and started to run back home. And I have to say that my mom had an incredible intuition. But the other thing I have to say is that she listened to her intuition. And when she started to run, I looked at her like, oh, I wonder why she's running. And at the same time, the moment I changed my view, at the end of the road, I saw a dog. And because I love animals, the moment I felt the desire to be with the dog, I was with the dog. So I just forgot about mom, and now I'm like having fun. I'm with this dog. And the moment I changed my view and I see a park, I am in the park. And I started to play this game of going places. It was like time and space for me. The way I knew it just vanished. And I'm just having fun. And again, in just a blink, everything in this experience was like that. I appeared in a realm that was made of pure, intense, shiny light. Oh, and that was the first time in the 3 years of my life, almost 3, that I was like, I am home. I am finally home. And it was that sense, and something incredible happened because I didn't see anyone, but it was the sense that I was being welcome. Like I was not there alone. And then, although I had seen my body suspended in the water, up to this point, I didn't have the clarity, the realization that that was not who I really was. And this is when I had that clarity. It's like, oh, I am not that body. I am not that persona. I am not that. And it's when I realized myself as a being of light. And I started to have this sense that I was kind of dissolving and I was being part of everything, but I was still having a sense of self. But there was a moment in which this even vanished and I experienced what I call nothingness. Some people call it non-self, some others call it emptiness. There's many ways that people try to describe this. In reality, there's no words. I only can say what is not. In this state, there was no color, no meaning, no sound, no description. And when I say nothingness, people get kind of scared, but I say it's nothingness because it's nothing I knew, but it's the totality of absolutely everything. It's like going from a little box to now experience the whole. And when I am in this incredible state of being, and I guess the only thing I could say about it is that is the state of pure presence and absolute consciousness. And when I am there, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing that is incredible. We live in a big house, but my mom knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house where the patio was. And there in the patio was still my oldest sister, which I guess at that moment, her purpose was to tell mom, validate, Ingrid is there in the tank. And she told my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. And my mom, again, all these synchronicities, these incredible things in life, my mom worked with children and she was trained CPR for children. So my mom jumped in the tank, she got me out. She said that I was like a raggedy doll. There was no pulse, no breathing, nothing. And she started to do everything she knew to revive me. And me, I was there in the state of bliss. I didn't feel anything. I was not planning about, there was not thought. There was nothing that you come back, you don't come back. I was just in a state of pure presence, I would just say. And then it was like if I had been pushed from the tallest building in the world. And I started to fall. And I started to feel like I was being sucked, like I was being vacuumed back in the body. And I could not stop this. But my whole feeling at that moment is like, no, I don't want it, I don't want it. And I knew that I was back because I started to feel again all the sense of, first, the lack of freedom, the sense of I was cold again, I could feel the sense of not being well, all the stuff that the human body brings. And guess what? I was not happy. I was very angry. I didn't want to be back. And I was just looking at my parents and just telling them, and my mom, and later, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And later I will look at myself in the mirror and come to my mom crying and say, you don't understand. This is not me. This is not my name. I don't want to be here. My poor mom. Thankfully, she was very patient and compassionate, but it was clear that I came back with an awareness I didn't have before. So when I look at my parents, it was that sense of like, they're not just my biological parents. I felt them as my equal. I had experienced a sense of oneness. So for me, it was like I became very rebellious because it's like, why? I don't have to listen to what they have to say. And the other thing is when I look at my body, I had that clarity. I'm not this child. And I never felt like a child again. And when I was looking at other children later, it was like, I could not relate. I could not play with them because it was like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So it was pretty difficult for me. And the other thing is that it wasn't just in that sense of that awareness, but I started to have abilities that I didn't have before. Like I mentioned to you guys, I'm just close to be 3 years old. And not long after now, I could read and write. I could resolve mathematical problems. I could put together complex puzzles. I could do these incredible drawings. So, and later these developed even more and more and more. And for me, it was that clarity, even in a school, like, I'm not learning any of these. I am just remembering. And the other thing that happened, I was so angry that I stopped eating. I got sicker than before. I refused to be here. I reached the point that, guys, I didn't even want to be touched. I was just really, really angry. But thankfully, the help that I needed came in the most remarkable way. And again, no long after I had my near-death experience, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. And then I will go and experience like changes in colors, changes in light, changes in like movement, sounds, frequencies, things that I have never experienced in this physical realm. At the beginning, it was kind of shocking, but every time this happened, when I went to sleep, I was being taken to the same realm of the light. So I really wanted to be there, and I started to sleep a lot. And my parents, of course, they told this lady to leave because I almost drowned because of her. It was all the bad. And now they hire another one. But because I was sleeping all the time and she didn't have to take care of me, that was good. So I loved it because I spent hours sleeping and I was going to this realm of the light. And in one of these journeys, one day I was surrounded by starlight figures that were shining all over the place. And now I really wanted to sleep. And in one of these journeys, one of these figures, that it was like a light shining in gold, pure gold. And it approached me and it shaped itself into a human form. And it touched me. So it kind of showed me, look, we're the same. And because I had seen myself as a being of light, the moment it touched me, I said, oh, you are a being of light. And then I woke up. And guess what? Now I really wanted to sleep all the time, but guess what? We need balance. I could not be the child that slept forever. So, and how that balance came. Later, I was one day taking a shower and I was all relaxed in the shower when a huge blue bright light shone in the bathroom. And I was like, whoa, now the beings of light are here. And that's when I started to heal. When the beings of light started to be here with me all the time, I felt the sense of love and the sense again of home. And later in life is when I understood that home was not a place, because I wanted to go there. I wanted to go somewhere else. And when the beings of light started to appear here and I started to heal and knit and play with my sisters and be more comfortable, it's when I understood home is not a place, it's a state of being. And then now, although I was feeling better, I was throwing big tantrums because I did not relate with my name. I couldn't relate with my persona. So there was an evening when they're calling me to eat dinner. Ingrid, Ingrid, and I'm like, I will get so aggravated. And then the lady came, Ingrid, we're calling you for dinner. And I said, don't call me like that. That is not my name. And then the lady said, then what is your name? How should we call you? And I said, I do not need one. Oh gosh, now this girl. And then they sent me to bed because I was just giving too much trouble. And then this is when the beings of light talked to me for the first time. Before I only was seeing their presence. Now for the first time I hear a voice. And it was a voice that told me in a very loving, compassionate, it's almost like telling me a secret. Ingrid, is going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light, as you already know. I felt this sense of like, thank you for sharing this with me. I am not crazy. I understand now why I don't need a name. And then there was the other thing, but they said to me also that it was going to take time for them to understand all this that was happening, and that all the experiences that I already had and the ones that were coming were all for me to one day, someday I would share them, that they were not for me to keep. But for now, I had to remain quiet because they were not going to understand. And for me, it was like, but what is not to understand? I mean, like, what? Because this was my reality. And they said that it was best to remain quiet, but people were going to be put in my path to help me and to guide me. And that I was never going to be alone. And yes, one of that first people was my mom. And when I was 5 years old, my mom was the first one validating that what I was seeing was real. And what happened is that she discovered that I could see auras and beings of light. And what happened was that at a school, because I was told not to say anything, I had to express myself somehow. And I was painting beings of light everywhere. In my book, in my notebook everywhere. And the teacher was curious, like, okay, Ingrid, what are those? The stars, the sun. And I looked at her, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And the teacher like, oh, she thought I was having imaginary friends. So she said, and when she tried to ask me more, I went quiet because I realized, oh, she doesn't understand. So she called my parents, my mom came, she's showing her all these drawings. And it's when we also realized that I was seeing auras, because all my drawings had auras. And then my mom, at that moment, I wanted someone to believe me so bad that I said, Mom, you have to believe me. These are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. And my mom, she just gave me these big mom eyes like, be silent, because my mom was a teacher and she didn't want me to be in trouble. So we left the place. She told the teacher, this is just a phase. Everything is going to be fine. And when we left, I was so sad. And it's when my mom said to me, I believe you. And this is amazing what I'm going to share. She said, I believe you because I also see things that other people cannot see. So she revealed to me that she could see what is called spirit. But at that moment, my mom also said, you have to be quiet because nobody's going to understand. This that also happened to me. So she validated what the beings of light had told me. And at 6 years old, I started to see spirits too. And I will share something more a little later about this. The next person that appeared in my life to guide me and help me was my grandmother. And she's the one that brought and was, how I say this, like was able to help me in the path of spirituality, to understand who I was and what was happening there for me. And my grandmother, she was raised as Catholic, but she was a very rebellious woman. And she always knew that there was more than the Catholic teachings. And she brought to our home teachings of Hinduism, Buddhism, Kabbalah, and she joined a Rosicrucian order, and she was bringing all these teachings. And by the age of 8, she taught me how to meditate. And she taught me the sound Om. And right after she taught me this, I woke up in the middle of the night and the whole house, my body, everything was vibrating with the sound of Om. And then when this happened, it's like it propelled to go deeper in my wanting to know more. And then after that, I kept continue having more spiritual experiences. And this feeling propelled to know more brought me to want to read and investigate. And my grandmother started to bring books to the house. And by the age of 9, I was reading books like the Bhagavad Gita, books of self-realization, books of discernment. I wanted to know. And I also wanted to know everything about humanity and science and everything else. But by the age of 12, I was so troubled because I felt the deeper I went, it was the sense I don't belong here. No one is like me. I don't want to be here. So by 12, I told my grandmother that I wanted to die. And she was so afraid. She's like, oh my God. So she brought me, and this was unheard in Colombia, a little Buddhist temple in the middle of nowhere. And she said, I know this peaceful place you're going to like. She took me there. And oh yes, this place was amazing. And I felt peaceful. And this monk taught me a breathing meditation technique. And I felt like home. And then at the end, I told the monk, my grandma's a very busy woman. I don't think she can bring me to the temple anymore. And it's when he said to me, you never need to come back to this temple because you already have a temple. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you are the temple. So wherever you are, you can bring this meditation with you. So by that age, I already started to, I knew prayer because my mom taught me how to pray, and now I knew meditation. So I was very in depth into prayer and meditation. And by 14, I joined transcendental meditation and more things. through all those young years of my life. And by 17 years old, I started to have access to past life experiences. I'm not going to talk about this because it's too long, but I want to bring the clarity that the very first day that I was able to access past lives, like I mentioned to you, I was gone very sick. After my NDE, I got worse. And by the age of 17, I had chronic bronchitis. I had very bad respiratory problems and asthma. And the very first time I was able to see my past lives, and I saw I had died from respiratory problems many lives, that very day I healed and have never been sick with respiratory problems ever again. And that's in my book if you guys want to read about it. And later, I realized that I started to have visions since I was 4 years old. And as I mentioned, I was born in the mountains, but I became a marine scientist. And the way this happened is because my parents brought me to see the ocean when I was 4. And the very first time I saw the ocean, I was mesmerized. And I turned to my mom and I said, someday I'm going to know what is under that blanket. And when I was 5 years old, I approached my dad and I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a marine scientist. And my dad is like, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what you will do. And that was it. This is the other thing. People ask me, how could you become a marine scientist if you drown? You should be afraid of water. And I said, no, because drowning brought me to see the light. So for me, water became very, very important. And talking more about these of the spirits, I want to bring something pretty quick, because when I started to see spirits when I was 6, I got very scared. And it was so frightening. I was petrified in fear. And it was in the middle of the night. And when my mom, I saw she got up, I chased her. And it's when I said to my mom, no. The spirits and the beings of light are not the same. And then my mom was curious and she's like, okay, explain to me with clarity, then what is it that you see? Because she thought we were seeing the same thing. And I said, no. And then I described, and my mom started to cry. And she said, I think that you see angels. And I said, but I don't know, Mom, because they don't have wings. So my mom but she's like, it has to be angels. And she told me how to pray and call for the angels if something like this ever happened. And I was frightened. So of course, because I already been talking with the beings of life for a while, I went to them and asked, and I said, first thing I wanted to know about the spirits, and because they caused me fear, I called them like dark spirits. And the answer was amazing, because I was expecting to hear, yeah, you all different. And what they said to me was amazing. They said, that you call a spirit, you, us, in essence, we're all the same. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. Like, wow. And some of them, they're lost and they get attached to the matters of the world. But there's ways in which someday they will wake up. And then the other question I wanted to know if they were angels. I said, are you angels? My mom called you angels. And the answer was incredible, because it's when they said to me, you can call us whatever you want. Wow, that's amazing. This is just things present to us in the way that we need them. But of course, imagine this child seeing beings of life, living a life that was so different from the other children. So guess what happened when I went to school? I was being bullied. I was being ostracized. I couldn't relate with anyone. And incredibly, it wasn't just the abilities of the awareness. I mean, abilities of seeing or sensing. I also, like I mentioned to you, had the ability to learn really easy. And incredibly, at the time, there was not an education in Colombia for children like me. So I was regarded as annoyed. This girl is annoying because I wanted to know everything. I wanted to ask everything. It's like I knew everything, and they will put me back in the corner. Like, if you think you know everything, you go there. So all this started to become a burden. And then I would just be so sad, and I didn't understand. And I said to the beings of light all the time, but why did you send me here without a manual? This is not fair. And then I asked them, why me? And the answer was amazing. They said one day, because you are special. But I asked, what do you mean when you say that I am special? And the answer was even more beautiful, because it's when they say, everyone is special, but not everyone knows it yet. And someday everybody will know it. And someday you will again be able to share all this with other people. But guess what? That why me thing, although they were telling me beautiful things, at the age of 19, when I went to college, it was the sense that I need to ground. I had 3 more sisters by then, and then parties, then life, then things. And I'm like, I don't fit in this world. I'm not like anybody of these people. I had this sense of like, I want to belong. I want to belong. And then it was, one day I was sitting in a bus and I was going to college, and I was so torn inside because I didn't know how to live my life as human. And then I said to the beings of light, I wish none of this was real. And I said, watch out with what you ask for. Because at that moment, it's like everything started to dissolve. The bus, like I knew the constituents that made possible the bus, and the frequencies and vibrations and everything. And when everything vanished, including me, I was in that realm of the light back again. And then at that moment, I had 2 questions. I came back, I was there, I came back, and I said, how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And when did we stop being one with the whole? But then I had a 3rd question. Guess what? Why me? Why this is happening to me? So I was feeling like a victim, and I needed more time to grow and mature, and I was still too young. And then the beings of light said to me, in 20 years, you will understand. And he's like, oh God, 20 years, you crazy. But then also at this time, and I asked, was they asking, can I just be like everyone else? And then it's when that direct connection I have with the beings of light ended. It was like, can I have a break? Can I be on my own? And when people ask me, how could you do that? And I said, no, it's because it's like when you are going to college and you leave your parents' house, you need your independence, you need to grow. So your parents are not going to hold you there. But guess what? Your parents didn't disappear. They are one call away. Same thing happened with the beings of light. They say, soon you will not hear us or see us like now, but we are going to stay there, still there. And yes, but this is the other thing that happened. This other analogy I like to give, and is that for the first 19 years of my life, it's like I was in a room full of light, and say this room is filled with furniture. But when the light is on, guess what? You're not going to trip because you can see. But what happened the moment I disconnect is like I turn the light off. And now I am in the room full of furniture, but I cannot see. So all the furniture becomes obstacles. So what happened? I started to have many challenges and many sufferings, because in a way, I came to this realm, I came to this world, and my NDE happened when I was so young because my purpose was to wake up. So now I'm having all these challenges, Ingrid, wake up. And then I had many more encounters with death that I will mention with you guys, but each one brought profound teachings. And when I was 20 years old, I was almost raped and murdered. But this experience validated to me that I really didn't fear death, and that there was no enemies, and that we were never alone. And what happened is that I was in a beach with a friend. We were snorkeling, and when we were about to leave, 3 men came, attacked us. They wanted all our belongings. And then, okay, we thought you have all our stuff, but they didn't just want our belongings, they wanted more. And they tied my friend and they pushed him to the sand, and they had knives, and one of them had a sharp glass, and they were about to cut his neck. And you know, one thing I have for clear is that I didn't fear death, but I had it clear here in the head. I didn't know that for real. I was there. And this experience had proved that, because when my friend is about to be cut in the neck with this glass, I didn't want to see the brutality of the scene. I was petrified. Imagine the fear. Then I turned my head around because I didn't want to see this. And this beach was beautiful. The ocean was calm. Imagine that contrast, the brutality with this paradise. And the sun is hitting the water. And the moment I see this, I enter into the state of calmness and connection and peace. I don't even know what happened, because imagine that level of brutality, and I was at peace. And the first thought that crossed my mind was, today is a good day to die. I surrender completely. It was the place of connection. There was no thought in my head. There was not the ideas, nothing is going to happen if we were not here. There was no thought. There was no attachment to any thought. And then the guy pushed me to the ground. I was like 90 pounds. He was like 200 pounds. One of the guys lied on top of me, and I was in the state of super angry. I couldn't even feel his weight. And then I'm lying there. Imagine I should be screaming, crying. Oh my God, the terror, nothing. And then he's lying on top of me, and I grab his face and I put his eyes directly in my eyes. And I said to him, dear, don't do this to me. And the moment I say this, he jumped like a coil. And he said to the other ones, we are leaving, we're leaving. And then they left. And I untied my friend. I told him we have to leave because they're going to come back. And then, okay, we went and climbed this mountain, whatever. They came back. And my friend, who was an atheist, turned and said to me, how is this possible? How you knew for sure that we're going to come back? Why did they let us go? I said, if you didn't believe in guardian angels, today is the day. But what really happened that day, besides all this, is that when I look at this guy directly in the eyes, it's like we became one. All his layers of conditioning fell apart, and I couldn't see that enemy. I couldn't see he's the one attacking me and I am the victim. There was none of this. I saw his true nature, and I saw that all this layering was because of all the pain and sufferings and stuff that he carried. And then I cannot know what he saw, but he had to see something at that level because they left. And I knew the conditioning was going to come back. So it's when I said we had to run. So that's when I understood. And at that moment, I didn't integrate it like that. But later I realized, and I received that clear message, there are no enemies. And when we are in that presence, that's the power of being present. We can see what the normal eyes cannot see. Then when I was 23 years old, I had a second near-death experience. And this experience brought me again to the place of no fear and no pain. And what happened is that I was living in an island. I had a motorcycle, and it was a new motorcycle, and I was a little bit fearful to drive it still. And a friend told me, oh, let's go. Can you bring me to my house? And his house was in a neighborhood up a hill in a mountain. And I don't think I should bring you. I'm afraid to drive this bike. Oh, don't be silly. And you know, when you want to please people, like, okay, because I like the guy. So I was driving, he was sitting at the back, and we were uphill. And then there's a moment when I went to change gear, and that's when I don't know what happened. And guess what? I did not have a helmet. And then the bike did like a jump and fell. But even before the bike fell, I was standing in the middle of the road. And I'm there like completely surrounded by light. There was, again, no fear, no pain, no thought, no emotion, but just the sense of, I am home. I am home again. This immense peace and serenity and well-being. And I'm just like, this is so incredibly good. Again, it's that sense of peace. And then somebody arrived to the scene of the accident and picked me up. And the moment they picked me up and I felt that the touch in the body is when I got scared. That's the moment. Again, the fear, the emotions came back, because why I cannot see this person? Why I cannot see this person? And I started to touch my face and realize I cannot see him because I am blind. What happened is I had hit my head so hard with the ground that I lost my vision. And I was rushed to the hospital. And in the hospital, it took a while to recover my vision, like throughout the day. And after that, to heal, it took a couple of months. But when I started to see again, the doctor came to the room, my friend was there. And the doctor said to me, you had to lose your vision the moment you hit the ground, because it was a pretty traumatic accident. And I said, it cannot be possible, because I was standing in the middle of the road and I was seeing light. How could I be blind if I was seeing light? And my friend said to me, Ingrid, it's not possible that you saw light, because where the accident happened, the road was completely dark. It was at night and it was pitch black. And he said, and by the way, you never stood up. So it's when I realized, okay, yes, again, I saw the light, but with the eyes of my soul. And I was again feeling that I was not alone, that I was home, that I was surrounded. Same thing. And what that pretty much at that moment taught me is, and the message I meant to bring with that is, when people ask me many times if their loved ones suffer when they die in fatal accidents, and I was that clarity, no, there is no fear, there is no pain. Even before I was in the ground, I was out of the body. From the ages 29 to 32, I worked in a war zone and I contracted typhoid fever. And again, like another one, but this experience brought me to, I saw so many, it was so much suffering, so many massacres, so much hardship, plus being sick and seeing other people and being in quarantine gave me, my empathy and compassion grew enormously. And also self-compassion and self-love. It was just the opening of the heart right there. And later, 36 years, I had a very high risk pregnancy. Again, I was like, oh, the baby and I were close to not make it. And it was, again, that power of love, compassion. My family gathered, they pray. So it was like the power of prayer and love that kept us here. So every one of these challenges was bringing teachings. And by the age of 39, when I was like, I have just in the moment where I was at the full of my career as a marine scientist working, I was an oceanographer. Now I had a PhD working for NASA, very, very busy. And a series of synchronicities presented for me to meet the Dalai Lama and receive his teachings in Dharamsala, India. I went there, I spent a week with him. And in my way back from this trip, I had a car accident. And I had to be medevac to the United States. It was pretty bad. But it's when like meeting the Dalai Lama, receiving his teachings, having this accident, it just brought me to realize how far and how disconnected I have become from the truth that I was, from my authentic self, from the beings of light. I said, how could I have ever told them that I had to leave home? How could I have done this? It's like at that moment was that sense of like how, in which moment I just forgot who I truly was. And I became very, very, very depressed. It was, and I was thinking of all the hardships of the war, all the times I almost died. Everything just became this ghost of sadness in my life. But this profound depression brought me to have a big awakening. And when I was in the depthness of my depression and I was in the dark night of the soul, it was a moment where I thought about committing suicide. That night I thought, I'm done. And then is the night in which I went back to pray. And my prayers were so deep because in my prayers, I was not looking for anything to be changed. I wasn't asking, change this, change that. My prayer was, God, help me see because I cannot see. I was, God, I have lost my way. I have lost my vision. So please give me clarity. And then is when I was guided to meet a psychologist. The very next day, after going through that prayer, is when I have that sense. And I received the message, very simple one, you need help. And the idea was like, go see a psychologist. And I went online and I found the name of a psychologist. And incredibly, these synchronicities happened that 2 more people from complete different places, sources, gave me the name of the same psychologist. And I had it written on a paper. I get it, I get it. I went to meet this guy. The guy was very spiritual. He was the right person. And then this guy told me to write all my sufferings. And I wrote all these sufferings on this paper. And it's when the guy, we read them together and he said to me, I have never seen anyone that has suffered this much and is mentally stable. And it's when, again, this question resurfaces, of course, and I said, why me? Why this is happening to me? And it's when he gave me the answer that turned on the light again. And I had this big awakening. After that, it just started to happen. His answer was, why not? That's simple. But he started to say, look, Ingrid, thanks to this, you have done this, and thanks to this, that, and thanks to this, and all the knots started to just being tied together, and I started to see light in everything. And wow, at that moment, I entered in this state where I could connect everything. And I said that 3 miracles happened that day. First, it was the realization like, wow, yes, nothing ever happened to me, but for me to be at this moment of clarity, of awareness, of awakening. The second thing, it was nothing was happening right now. My only truth is that I was in front of this doctor telling him what was happening, and everything else was here in my mind. So imagine the sense of inner power. I can do whatever I want with the things that are in my head. And the third miracle was discovering the true meaning of forgiveness, because it's when I realized there's nothing to forgive, because nothing ever happened to me. It happened for me, and I entered in the state of complete gratitude. And then I could say, or there's nothing to forgive, or I forgot everything. Forgave everything, not forgot, but forgave it all. So it was the sense of freedom. And I love this sentence from Eckhart Tolle, who says, life is not here to make us happy. Life is here to challenge us so we can find that happiness within ourselves. So you can see life was shaking me so hard. Remember that happiness is within you. And it's yes, when I realized that the farther that we move from the truth that we are, from our authentic self, the more misaligned you become and the more you will feel challenged. And I love this sentence from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj that says, failure and success are the very fabric of life. Learn from both and go beyond. If you have not learned, you will repeat. And it's when we're like, why this is happening again? Because we haven't passed the year. We haven't passed the test. We haven't learned. And then I was listening to these teachings from Paramhamsa Yogananda, a Hindu teacher, master, that was saying, if the core of who you are is that of joy and peace and presence, then the true question is, what am I doing to disturb it? What am I doing to not be that? And it's when the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, people don't understand. You have to have this clear, that what you call love, joy, peace are not just feelings. Those are universal principles. Then it was to bring this clarity. These principles are the glue that hold the fabric of the universe together. They are the space between. We don't know where they are, but they are everything. It's like, I love my son, but where is the love? Where can you point it? It's everywhere. And that space between, that thing that we cannot see, that but is everywhere, is what we call God, the creator, consciousness, ultimate reality, the eternal subject, and the eternal presence. And when you ask people, okay, give me a list of the things you wish in this life, they come like, I want love and happiness and well-being and abundance and health and money so I can have all that. And I ask people, why do you think you want these things? I said, because what you are truly, truly yearning is to be your authentic self. That's why you want these things. You want to go back to what you truly are, what we call universal love, true love, and consciousness. Consciousness. And when I had that experience in the bus, when I vanished and the beings of light said, in 20 years, you will understand. Remember, you guys remember, I asked 2 questions. How is it possible to forget who we truly are? And when did we stop being one with the whole? And what happened when I left the doctor's office? And now, you know, I had that wow awakening in my head of like, whoa, gratitude, true connection, unconditional love, all that. I went in the car. And it's when I had this other spiritually transformative experience that was the opening of that big awakening. And I'm sitting in the car is when I realized that we call consciousness, God, source, ultimate reality, love was absolutely everything. There was nothing that wasn't it. And then at that moment, I knew that 20 years have passed. And again, it's like time disappeared, because the 2 questions that I have asked 20 years ago were answered. And the questions were, when did we stop being one with the one with the whole? And how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And the answer was, one never stopped being one. One never left the source. One just became distracted and seemingly forgot. And it's when I realized nothing is what it appears to be. And it's like the fish in the water. We're looking for what we already are. And then the being so light said to me, it's like the Alka-Seltzer. Things seem so solid. My drama, my story, my problem, my life. What happened when you put the solid Alka-Seltzer in the water? So it's nothing is what it appears to be. But guess what? The Alka-Seltzer is still there in the water. So I love this sentence from Saint-Exupéry, from The Little Prince, that says, all that is essential is invisible to the eye. And I realized that when we are aligned with source, the way becomes clear. When we're in that state of alignment, now we know what to do, where to go. It's like the answers come. We are connected with what we are. And the being so light said to me, Ingrid, nothing in the universe lacks purpose. Even the things that almost feel that it's impossible to believe, but they said the important thing is to learn to ask the right questions, and you will get the right answers. So it's when I started to actually ask the right questions, and I started to ask things like, why my near-death experience happened when I was so young? Simple things. And they said, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. Look how important that was. And in this picture is me and my oldest sister. And they also said to me, you were young enough to be innocent, pure and innocent, but old enough to never forget who you truly are at the core of your being. And that's what always remained there. And I said, then what was the purpose of my near-death experience? And they said, to share the message of the power of connection. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, remember when you went to see your body and you left it behind? Guess what? That was not your decision to make. That was your ego mind there. Oh, I feel well, then I stay. There was a bigger purpose. You meant to come back. Reason why you went to ask for the maid and for your mom. I'm like, oh, dang it, really? Because I didn't want to come back. So they were like, okay, yes. So if I was going to come back, why did I go meet the maid? Why would I waste time? And they said, because that's where is the message. They said, what happened when there is no connection, like with the maid? This woman used to mistreat us, so there was no love, there was no connection. They said, when there is no connection, there is division. When there is no connection, they will let you drown. There would be war. But what happened with my mom? Complete connection, unconditional love. So it don't matter, my mom was farther away from the house. She could know where I was, and she came and rescued me out of the tank. So when that connection is there, it's just, there's no time, there's no space, there's no limits. When there's pure love. And I ask, what is the purpose of our uniqueness? Because that's another thing I rejected. I didn't want to be who I was. And they said to show each other the full picture. And we're all here because it's like, say, it's like this big puzzle. All of us complete each other. It's like each one is a thread in the tapestry of the universe. And if that thread is not there, there will be a hole. If there's a piece missing in the puzzle, then it's not completed. So all of us is absolutely important. And I love to give the analogy of the fingers and the hand. They are all different. But what happens if these fingers fall apart? What it can do by itself? Nothing. They have to be together. They're all different, but they're working together. Is the uniqueness that encompasses unity. And guess what? They are all attached of the same hand. So oneness, not just uniqueness, not just unity, but oneness. And what happens when we work together? We become powerful, and we can work to save and be connected with nature. Remember also, we are nature. And sometimes we can become arrogant, you know, is the part of like, no, I know, and I'm spiritual. So that could be this spiritual arrogance, or at any moment. So this Zen teaching is very beautiful because he says, when you think that you are too much, remember that you are but a speck of dust in the universe. But when you think that you are nothing, remember that you are as whole as the universe. So sometimes we think I'm nothing, there you are. And the being so light said to me, you didn't come here to be normal. You came here to be you. You're exceptional you. And what is the time of, what is the purpose of time and experience, I asked. It was simple, to help you remember who you truly are. That's it. To help you remember that you're not just the wave in the ocean, that you're not just the surface. This is the journey to rediscover in a conscious manner that you are not just the wave, but the entire ocean. The journey to remember that I am and always have been consciousness, source, light. And for that, it's important to know yourself. And Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, I am the light in which all dreams appear and disappear. And that is the impermanence of our reality, like the waves come and go, but the ocean always remains. And the day we realize that the dream is just a dream, so it's not needed anymore, it simply dissolves, like it happens in my near-death experience, in many beautiful, incredible experiences, where is the sense like, there is no time. When there's no story, there is no time. And people ask me, but how we come back home? And the being so light showed me the analogy like a park in the Disney. You can have the goggles on and go up and down and feel the scare and the joy and side to side. The moment you remove the goggles, you realize, oh, I didn't go anywhere. And this is what is called the journey with no destination. You always have been there. And that's why home is not a place, it's a state of being. You don't have to go anywhere. You are already it. You are already there. And I always used to say to people in my talks, oh, it's like after my near-death experience, it's like the doors never closed, because things kept happening. I was still there, and one foot there and one foot here. And the being so light said, of course, Ingrid, there are no doors. You are the totality of everything. There are no doors. The doors are all those beliefs, all those ideas, all the stuff that we start putting on top of us, conditioning until we forget who we are. We lose our focus of attention. And I like this sentence that says, can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? And we just don't. And that's why it's so important to go back and quiet the mind, to go back to that place of calming and use all these techniques that is being offered to us for millennia. Calm your mind and you can go back to reconnect. And it's like the seed, and this beautiful sentence from Nisargadatta Maharaj that says, the seed of a spiritual life grows in silence and in the darkness until its appointed hour. But to be able for this seed to grow, it needs good dirt. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be fed with goodness and love and compassion and kindness so it can germinate. And once they're at home, we can teach others the way back home. We can help align and tune each other. And this can happen one person at a time. It could be our neighbor, our sister, our brother, our father, our husband, whoever does the work. And the being so light said to me, Ingrid, don't be concerned with what others do. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you fix yourself first. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's not just a slogan, it's true. Be the reason someone smiles, be the reason someone feels love and believe in the goodness in every person. I love this from Roy Bennett. and we're almost to finish, but people ask me, when will I be ready to serve? And I said, I had another one of these experiences. I almost drowned in the ocean. I was in big waves. I was rescued from these waves. And once I am standing at the edge of the ocean and I'm seeing the waves, I realized that there was not a moment which again I had any fear. And looking at the waves, I realized I'm ready to serve. No matter the size of the wave, I'm ready to serve. And it's when my book happened and I started to share, I started to talk. So I said, people, when the fear is gone, you will know. And then I asked the beings of light, what is my purpose? And what is everybody's purpose? And it says, your purpose, each one of you, is to be the light, to remember who you are. You are the light. And your mission is to shine that light. And each awakened being can serve as the light in the awakening of hundreds more. And I invite you today to be that light. But one light alone can flicker in the wind. So we need to get together and become that big, big flame and go back again to that place of being silent. The beings of light said to me, all power comes from silence. And remember that you are the light of consciousness, the I am, that presence, that light, that source, that love, that goodness. And Jesus, written in John 8:58 said, Jesus said, this is beautiful because before Abraham was, I am, he said. He didn't say before Abraham was, I was. He said, before Abraham was, I am the eternal presence, the eternal subject. So I said, the I am is the witness of consciousness. Keep your attention focused in the I am, and you will not lose the way. Humans have come into being for the sake of each other. So teach them or learn to bear them, Marcus Aurelius said. And to end, I want to leave you with that clarity, how you teach love, how you teach compassion, how you teach any of these principles by being that. Be that love, be that joy, be that peace that come from the state of being. Be, and you cannot be wrong. So unity and connection starts within. So be that light that you are. And here, this is my book, A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom. And if you need to find more information or want to contact or anything, my website is ingridhonkala.com. And I am also in all the different media pages.
Oh boy, I was totally absorbed by your talk, Ingrid. I was just on the edge of my seat. Ingrid, in your talk, your pre-talk teaser thing, you said to people that you would teach them how to communicate with the beings of light. So can you say something about that? How, if I go within, how can I communicate with these beings of light?
Thank you, Brian, for bringing that up, because yeah, that was, I thought about bringing it through the talk, but I was so in depth into everything else that I forgot, but yes. And I mentioned it actually in a way, but not that this will also open us to us, but to that, but when we learn to calm the mind, when we're able to go to that place, and that's what throughout my life happened. When I was in the beach and I was attacked, the moment I was able, because I've been already meditating and praying for years, that brought me to that place and that state where I was able to pause, to have the possibility to reconnect with that place of openness, spaciousness, that, you know, I say, people, if you are in a discotheque with so much noise, you cannot hear. How can you hear the beings of light? How can you see anything if you have your eyes covered? There's a lot of smoke, whatever it is. So for this, you have to first do the work. And the work is calm your mind. Go to that place where you're able to create that pause, to create a space, to be able to now open your inner ears to listen. And that connection for happening. And that's how little by little, it start presenting. It is the sense of like, oh, there's people I talk with, and they want to really do the work. And then at the beginning, they would say, oh, I saw a light. And then later, oh, I was able to hear something. I was able to smell something, because this little by little will remove the layers of, we've been told this is not possible, we cannot do it. All these beliefs and all this stuff is there pile, and that's the noise. And those are the layers that don't let us see. So the more we quiet the mind, the more we calm ourselves, the more we go to that place of creating a space. Now we're, I would say, like, Brian, like we're like radios. And then if the radio is in the dial is in to listen or to be focused, say, in the outer reality, and the antennas also pointing to that direction, then that's all we can actually manage to see and hear and taste and experience. But the more we align, the more we go to what is called high vibrational frequency, lower by, the more we create that space, we start moving that dial. And now we start being able to connect with different frequencies. And I said, people, everything is here for us always. So all TV, to say an analogy, internet, music, everything is here and now. But I need to dial and put my antenna in the right place to be able to communicate, to be able to listen, to be able to establish that connection. So yes, calming the mind is the beginning.
Great, thank you, Ingrid. So some questions are starting to come in and comments too. One is, you touched on recalling past lives. Is that in your book, or do you plan to speak on that in the future?
There's a little bit of that in my book. My book at some point turned so long that we had to, at the beginning when I wrote it, was 170,000 words. So it had to be reduced, but there's a little bit of it there. And what is incredible about this is that for me to realize that what was about to happen was real, I had an experience that was previous to starting to have a past life, access to the past lives. And what happened is that I became very interested with hypnotherapy. I went to this thing and I want to know more about that. I went to an event, and then a friend told me about these psychologists that practice hypnosis, and I went to meet these psychologists. And because I had all these illnesses, respiratory problems, I wanted to ask about my health, because it will always let you go with a question. I asked about my health. This was amazing, because this is the first time I was meeting this person. And then I went into the hypnosis, and what I started to see was not my life. I started to see the psychologist's life. And I started to see when he was a child, and that he was sick, and that he had these traumas, and that he had been born with cleft palate, but I couldn't even know that because he had a beard and he had surgeries. But I said he had a trauma. I started to name everything, and he's like, how is this possible? You could not know these things. I said, and then I told him, shh, be quiet, because you will heal. So I started to tell him everything, and at the end, he was amazed. And he said, I have to introduce you to my friend that is another person working with hypnosis, but he's an expert in past life regressions. So he sent me to these other psychologists, and it's when happened, when I had I went with this question, why I am so sick, why I have, and that day I actually arrived with a really bad episode of bronchitis. And I'm sitting there in his office, and then I went back, and the first feeling was being frigid cold. And it's when I had the realization of the first death that I could remember at that moment. And I was in a dungeon, and I was a prisoner, and I've been sentenced to death because of my beliefs. And now I was dying there, and I saw the moment I died, and I had, I guess, something like tuberculosis. Then I started to have access to many, 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 many more lives when I have died from respiratory problems back to like 3,000 years. And then the first death where everything started is I reached that place is where I died because I was in a war, and there was a spear that crossed my lungs. And then, you know how in this life, my first near death was drowning. In that life, this is what I saw, and sounds terrible, but I was drowning, but the way I drowned was in my own blood. And then, of course, imagine the trauma that probably I was holding from this thing. And from many lives after that, I died from tuberculosis and from respiratory problems. And now I am in this life remembering all this. And then I woke up in the doctor's office, and I look at him and I said, oh, I understand why I have been sad, why I have been sick, why I was depressed. I understand all this sadness. And the very moment I had the clarity, I heal for the rest of my days. And to even validate further this whole thing, a couple of years ago, I had a kidney stone, and I went to the hospital, and they did a X-ray to see the stones there in the kidney. And then they found something in my lung, in my right lung. And then they were all like, oh, your kidneys are okay, but there's a scar in your lung. And then now I had to get these plates done for like 2 years to make sure that it was not cancer, that it was not something strange changing. And it's when the doctor said to me, the only way you could, it's not possible. The only way you could have this scar in your lung if you ever had tuberculosis. And then I laughed. I didn't say anything to him, and I said, yes, but not in this life. And then, yeah, and that was exactly the place where I saw in that memory that the lung had pierced that the spear had cut my lung. So yeah, so these all things prove and validate what happened when we have clarity, when we have access to that knowing. So healing comes.
Thank you. One of the remarkable things about your experiences in your talk is you're showing very vivid examples of how spirit affects us even down to the physical. So with that story, with the story of the rapist and looking in the eyes, so that's really amazing. A couple comments. Absolutely loved your talk. So incredibly inspiring. Can hardly wait to buy and read your book. You are truly a being of light, peace, love. And then from one near-death experiencer to another, just wonderful and beautiful. Loved your story. It's all about love, service, and growth. Mm-hmm. And here's another question. Hi, Ingrid. I always wonder if we are all aspects of the one. Why do we need to learn when we are already all-knowing?
You know, I love that question, and I teach a whole class about that, because the beautiful thing is that, and the only analogy I can give to make this clear is, imagine that look at a little baby. And when a little baby is born, the baby's pure, is innocent, but the baby doesn't know it came from the mom. It doesn't have the awareness. See? So he has to go through a process, or she, to start realizing, oh, yes, I have this thing called awareness. I have this thing called consciousness. Oh, I came from mom. Oh, what is all these things? See? So same, imagine that, I just imagine God seeing us as these little children. So same thing, we say that we're trans, and I like to put God, to give the analogy like the sun. And then now but the sun has all these rays that is the emanation of who we are, this uniqueness being called Brian, call Anne, call Yvonne, call Ingrid. And now it's like, oh, but it's like the little baby that doesn't know that it is an emanation and a part of God. So it has to go through all this process to gain that consciousness. See, it's the path of becoming aware that we are awareness itself. So we go through all this stuff. And it's when the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, you're just a parenthesis in the eternity of who you are. And each one of these little trips that you do, say to be human or whatever else, then you remember a little bit more. It's like you uncover and you start remembering who you truly are. And at the end, the whole thing is to realize, wow, I am still a child, but now a child that is aware. See, it's a very big difference between being childish and being childlike. It's again, like I'm pure and innocent, going back to the place of I am pure, innocent, conscious, God light, but I am aware. See, so that is the process of remembering.
Okay. Thank you. Another question is, why are so many beings so unaware of the spiritual oneness and connection? Also, in your current opinion, what do you think is the best method to connect with our deeper spiritual self? So I think you've kind of answered these, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that, there was a moment when I went to the beings of light, I'm like, how can I know? How can I unravel the mysteries of the universe? How can I know and unravel the mysteries of the universe? Like I asked for nothing. And then the beings of light said to me, the answer was beautiful, because they said to me, Ingrid, you are already the universe. So to know and unravel the mysteries of the universe, because what philosophers have said for like centuries, know thyself. Know thyself. And when this happened, I met this being of light in this temple. It was like a huge library, like huge. And this being of light was something like I've never seen before. And the being of light had all colors you can imagine in one being. And it had eyes everywhere. It was, one could think that it was weird, scary. No, it was, I cannot say how something like this can be beautiful, but it was absolutely beautiful. And the eyes were inside and out, like it could see it all. So it was telling me, you have to know you. And then I started the process of, before knowing more and adding more knowledge, more stuff in my life, I started the process of knowing who I was. And it was with even simple practices, because people don't understand that emotions, and I'm glad you actually asked this question, because everything that is there, and I love the sentence that says, what is in the way is the way. See, so a challenge that is there, an emotion that is there, anything that is there, what we do usually, I don't want it. Is resistance, push it away. But what about what anything present in our life, we start naming it, observing it. See, become the observer of yourself. Today I am angry. Anger, anger, anger. Name it. Why are you here? Can I allow you to be here? Come sit with me. Tell me, why are you here? So when we start talking to our challenges, instead of turning into problems, into sufferings, start turning into opportunities to grow, to evolve. In an emotion is presence, sadness. Why are you here? Where does it feel? Oh, here in my belly. So now it's not, that energy is not stuck in your belly. So you start integrating body, mind, spirit. See, I could just talk for hours about this, but that is the process. How can I start knowing myself? And instead, I call it when people get trapped in that suffering, because I said that they say that there's a challenge, and you always have two possibilities, and this is the true free will. People say to me, I have free will, and I said, I said, maybe you have free choice. Because they say I have free will because I pick the food I eat, I pick the clothes I eat, I wear, I chose this career. And I said, guess what? The food you eat is because your culture eat it. The clothes you wear is because your culture told you. Everything, we're conditioned already. The only moment you're using your free will is like, say, for example, there was a challenge. You can decide to state, I call it the cul-de-sac of suffering. And me and poor me, and we become victims. That's why the being so like say, you need 20 years and just become trapped in the Ingrid and poor Ingrid. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just sometimes we need to be shaken hard until we stop and we're like, okay, what is free will? The moment you stop. And that's why calming the mind meditation, all this is important, because it brings us awareness. And it's when we stop and we say, what is this for? That question is what changes everything. What is the purpose of this? Why is this challenge here? Why is this feeling here present? Why is this suffering? Woo. Now you start seeing things with different eyes. And now you're using whatever is happening in your life to evolve and to peel layers and go back to the center. So I hope it wasn't too long of an answer.
Thank you, that's great, appreciate it. Were you aware of the reasons behind all of those many past lives? And were you made aware of your level of awareness in those lives?
What is exactly the question? Can you read?
I think when you were experiencing these past lives, she's asking, were you aware of the reasons behind all those many past lives? And in those past lives, when you were reviewing them, were you were you told what your level of spiritual awareness was in those lives?
You know, it's again, it's the awakening is a process. So it was that realization that through same thing that in this life, every challenge is like every life, and in every one we are learning something. And if we use our free will to bring us to that place again of asking and wanting to know, the being so light said to me, Ingrid, when there's clarity, when there's understanding, there is love. And when there is love, there is connection. And when there is connection, there's forgiveness. And when there's forgiveness, there's evolution. And you go to the place of gratitude, and gratitude is the highest vibrational frequency there is. So you elevate yourself. So with each one of those experiences, there was a level of like remembering, we get shaken, like remembering a little bit who you are. And people ask me like, what if I don't have access to past life experiences? What if I cannot do it? Do I have to remember to wake up? And I said, no, you don't. You don't need to have a near-death experience. You don't have to remember those lives. I said, look at your life today. What are the challenges you're experiencing? What are the circumstances? What are your emotions right now? What you are today is talking about your entire existence. And there's challenges maybe you came to resolve here, and karma, we call it, which is cause and effect, things that need to be resolved here. And you came to maybe this moment to resolve certain things, but where we are today is we're projecting, is the resolve of all our lives. So the state of awakening I have today is revealing to me, wow, Ingrid already have been in the spiritual path for a long time. And I had my near death when I was 2 because I meant to remember pretty quick. And oh, I get it. See, so depending where we are at right now, we have that already idea of, oh, I understand. And when people ask me why we forget, and it's the being so light said, because why to, this is funny because they say, why to carry a big old wardrobe when you can have a new one? Because all this other stuff is not necessary. I mean, that's, oh gosh, that's heavy. Get it all away. The only thing that truly matters is where you are in your spiritual, in your connection with the truth that you are. And this is something I also say in my preview that I didn't have time to mention in my talk, but having the possibility to be a scientist has been incredible, because like I mentioned in that spotlight, it gave me the possibility to realize, spirituality is science. Because when you start knowing and observing yourself, it's a work you have to do. To know yourself, you have to apply the scientific method. I said, I could tell you, look, there's above these clouds, there's a sky, and you could choose to believe me, but you're not doing anything that putting in a belief. And I said, when people ask me, Ingrid, you believe this or this? I say, I don't believe anything. I know. And how I know? Because I've done it. And how I done it? Because I have meditated, because I have practiced, because I have prayed, because I have practiced compassion, because I have done it. So what is the scientific method? Okay, at the beginning, believe there's a message. Okay, let's see, because I choose to believe, I choose to observe. So now I observe this thing, now I do it. And now, oh, wow, I start getting a result, and now I can compare. Oh, this was before and after. Oh, this works. Oh, this doesn't work. See, I'm not believing, I'm really experiencing it. And being human being and having all this possibility to experience contrast is incredible, because we become the experiencers that brings us to know. And then it's when all these just become just so incredible. And with this, I want to bring the clarity that, yeah, we not always need to remember all our past lives, but have the clarity of where we are today. And being a spiritual is going back to that authentic self, going back to the core of who we are. And before we change question, there was a moment that the beings of light said to me, when I had my big awakening, I was still working for NASA. And imagine I'm surrounded by all these scientists. And then I'm there and I'm like, whoa, how can I tell all these people what I know that is beyond this science? I'm working in big projects in climate change, beautiful stuff, but it's like, this is beyond all this. Oh my God. And then it's when the beings of light told them, what can I do or say to these people? And the answer was, do or say nothing. And I'm like, what? And they said, no, the light of your awareness is all they need. They say, be that. Be that. If you discover that you are that light, that goodness, that greatness, that love, that compassion, that just be that. And the rest, the doing and the saying will come from that state of being. And then now I'll walk through the corridors of the agency and I'm radiating this light. And people, even the most grumpy scientist, the most serious person will stop and look at me and smile or say good morning. And people said to me, you know everybody in the agency? And I'm like, no, I don't. And that's what we do. That's just what we do. And to finish this answer, the beings of light gave me an analogy, very simple. They always like things that are simple. They show me how, when it's nighttime and you turn the light on in your porch, what happened with this light when you become that radiant light? All the little insects come to it because they're attracted. Why they are attracted? Because that's who you are. You want it back. So it's just, the work is here and now. Coming to these talks, being all together here, radiating this light. This is the path of remembering.
Great, thank you. Can humanity move beyond war and see that we are one while we are on Earth?
Yes, we can. And actually, when the beings of light said to me, like I mentioned in my talk, they said, do not be concerned with what others do. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you start here. Because guess what? When we start being that light for our home, for ourselves, for our children, for our community, for then we start becoming that. And that's what the world needs. That's the action. Is right there. It's not just about being empathic, but about learning to be compassionate. That is love in action. When I'm compassionate, I really want to do something, you know. And the being so, like, I'm going to share this really beautiful analogy with all of you, and I have shared it before, but it's the being so, like I said, the moment you think in terms of the collective, you disempower yourself. And they gave me the analogy of a castle. Say that, imagine that there's this enormous castle, and the castle is a mess. So that's the way the world seems to be right now, a mess, a disaster. And now you make today the wise decision, good for you, that you're going to fix it. Good, what can I do? The moment you think you can fix this castle in one morning, in one day, you're done, you're disempowered, you're overwhelmed. I'm done, there's nothing I can do. But what happened when you start room by room? I cannot even do the room, it's too much. What about space by space? Okay, now this little corner in the kitchen. I got it. Come on, Brian, oh, come on, and come and see what I did. Wow, that looks great. How can I do it too? See, little by little, you start being and shining that light for what is the people that are there right there with you. You empower yourself and empower others. And this way, we start working together like that big flame. I love this teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh that says, say that you're a little drop of rain. Imagine that little drop by itself trying to arrive to the ocean. It might even evaporate before it gets there. But what if that little drop joins that river and all together make their way to the ocean? And that's what we have to do here. It's not also the work that I do alone. Is what Yvonne, Robert are doing with organizations like SAI, with Brian and everybody volunteering and helping. Is we're becoming that big flame. And it don't matter the war, even you know, there's perfection in everything. We cannot see it with our eyes because we cannot see the big picture. We can only see, say there's this huge tapestry and only can see the eye of the elephant. But sometimes even war, the beings of light have shown to me, sometimes things like that are even necessary for people to wake up, to shake them so hard that they'll just say, I don't want this anymore. What can I do to end this? See, so we cannot see it because it's very sad, but everything, even things like that, have their own purpose. And again, we don't know how everything is working at the level of each individual, see? And what is doing to create change at the level of each individual.
Well, this is kind of a long question, but when one is in a state of light and awareness and then go out into the world and others can feel and come to you for guidance, but often are in their minds and ask many questions and want to know why, how, etc. How can you work with others without being pulled into meeting the inquiries of others' minds in solving their problems on other levels?
That's a really beautiful question, because we can fall into that. And guess what? We're not here to solve anybody's problems. We're here to actually bring clarity to the world. And the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, your path is the path of gentleness. You're not here to convince anybody about anything. Because the moment I try to push my truth into someone else, I'm creating division. Now I'm saying my truth is and not yours. See, so it's like we have to be gentle and we have to meet people where they are at. I put the analogy, say that you're a PhD and you go give a reading in a kindergarten school. You cannot go, if you say a mathematician, you cannot go there with your books of calculus or statistics, nothing. You go there with a book for children. See, you talk to the people at the level that they can understand, or you go to first grade, now you go to a college, oh, now you teach, you tune they cannot come, a child in kindergarten cannot come at the level of a PhD. You have to go to the level of this person. And that's the wisdom. And that's the compassion. That's when your heart becomes tender to the point like, whoa, I understand. Imagine, I always imagine how God sees me like, oh, this little child. See, I'm just these little babies. And then we're learning. And it's when the baby is learning to walk, you're not going to say, you're doing it wrong. Why did you fall now? And you're not also solving it for the baby. You're helping the baby, but the baby at some point has to walk by himself. See, so it's the same thing. You're trying to share the light. You're trying to share your experiences. You're trying to share, even our parents can tell us, don't go there, because one day I went there and I had a really bad experience. And now you're like, I really want to go and have my own, because that's how we are. We want to experience it ourselves. And sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't. But we cannot impose anything on anybody or to live anybody's life. And that's the big mistake about compassion. People think that compassion is pity. No, compassion is that you cannot go into the water where someone is drowning and drown with the person, because now you didn't do anything. You have to learn to hold the ground strong enough that when you're going to help someone, you hand your hand and you help the person come out of the water, see? And that you have to have that level of clarity. How can I help? And for that, you need discernment. And sometimes for that, you need to have distance. How can I do what I'm going to do? That's why the beings of light, and I repeated throughout the talk, calming the mind is the place where we will find the wisdom of how to do it, how to help, how to hand the hand. And now, before we go, I am going to give you with a really beautiful, beautiful teaching. For a long time, I wake up in the middle of the night and I receive teachings, I get visions. And one of these visions was a lake. And it was a really calm, peaceful lake, like, wow. And then there was a being of light standing at the other side of the lake with a pebble, like, I'm going to disturb this beautiful peace. And what is my first thought? Like, oh no, of course, my expectation is that the moment he drops this rock, he's going to disturb the whole lake. And then he grabs the pebble, he tossed it. And the moment the pebble touched the water, it did not create a disturbance. It did not create a ripple. So imagine like, oh, what just happened? And the beings of light said, that is where someday you'll have to be. Where no matter the challenge, where no matter the size of the rock, it will not create a disturbance. And the only way to get there is creating that inner peace, that inner calmness. So they said to me, why do you think that the human beings are made of 70% of water? Because they can be funny like that. I'm like, no, why? It's like, because that's the way that you can guide yourself to keep your inner water calm. And from that day on, I'm like, oh, keep your inner water calm. And now I am in the line, I am in the supermarket, I am somewhere where I have to wait, I'm bored, I'm whatever. Ingrid, keep your inner water calm. See, so life, like I said, what is in the way is the way. Life is there at every moment, giving us the opportunity to practice that inner peace, to use anything that is there to fuel our attention, to fuel our awareness, to be present, to be present.
Wow, thank you, Ingrid, for an absolutely fascinating and inspirational presentation today. It was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Ingrid.